Hi guys, this is a quick video on editing our pictures for the 30 photos that were inspired by the work of Albert Renger-Patzsch and his The World is Beautiful series. So I've already imported my pictures into the Lightroom Mobile app. That's where I am right now, and I made an album within Lightroom to keep my photos organized. So once you've got your Lightroom app open, in the bottom right corner, I know you guys can't see where I'm clicking, so I'll just be describing that. In the bottom right corner, you can see the blue button. On the left of that is the little picture with the plus sign, so that's what I would click on to add my photos. So you would want to do that first, so go ahead and do that, pause the video, and then come back. And then once I have my photos imported, I can scroll through very easily and see which pictures I want to edit. There's not really any prescribed order that you need to edit these photos in. I would just have fun with it and pick the ones that you feel like working on. Remember, you're editing a total of 30 pictures. So you can see in my folder here, I have 84 potential photos, but I'll just be editing the 30 that I like the best. So in looking for some of that industrial style that Renger-Patzsch was known for, I noticed this like storm drain, and I liked the contrast between the old drain and the old brick on the side, and then the brighter white on the right. So the first step is to deal with color in my image. So at the bottom here, you can see I can scroll, and I'm going to click on the color button. Remember, that was an accident. There's an undo button at the top. It's a curved arrow to the left. I'm hitting undo because I clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, so remember what we learned about last year when we talked about editing photos in black and white. There is a black and white button right here in the top left corner, but we're not going to use that because we want to only remove the color from the image. We don't want to mess with any of the values, which happens when you use an automatic black and white feature a lot of the time. So I'm going to simply scroll down to the bottom of color, and you can see the saturation slider here. This is just like what we did in Photoshop last year. So I can pull that all the way down to -100, and you can see, bam, that gives me black and white. The other thing, like I told you guys, if you would like for some of your pictures in this project, you can edit them using muted color. And what I mean by that is just having a little bit of color in the image like you see here. So that's before and after. In Lightroom Mobile, you can press and hold your picture and you can see the before and after, so that's pretty helpful. Personally, for this one, I'm thinking I'm just going to go with black and white. So now that I've got the color removed, the next step for me would be to start looking at the values. Remember, when we're editing our pictures, I always expect this of you, that you're paying attention to your values. So remember, we want to see in our pictures the lightest lights, the darkest darks, and all of the grays, all of the values in between lightest lights, darkest darks. So to do that, I'm going to click on the light button at the bottom, and I'm going to talk you through some of the features here. There's a lot more options in this app than what I'm going to show you today, so feel free to explore. The nice thing about the app is that everything is slider based, and there is that undo button at the top. So I can start just by dragging sliders and see what happens. If I let off of the slider and just hit undo, it takes me right back, and it tells me in the blue exactly what I had just done. So first slider here, exposure, that increases the overall lightness of your image. So if you feel like your picture is a little underexposed, you can increase the exposure. On the contrary, if you feel like your picture is a little too overexposed, then you can try bringing the exposure down a little bit. I'm hitting undo and it takes me right back to 0. Remember, with an overexposed image, the problem with that is that we can never recover the blown out values in the highlights, in the lightest lights. So, you know, you can only correct that but so much. So for me personally, looking at this picture, I don't really know, maybe I would turn the exposure up just a tiny bit, but I don't even know if, I feel like it's pretty properly exposed. Next thing I would look at is the contrast slider. Personally, I like to see a lot of contrast in my pictures, especially in black and white. The cool thing too, like I said, with the sliders and the undo button, you can make a change like I just did, plus 16 on the contrast. If I stare at my picture while I hit undo, you can see the after is right now. If I hit undo, I can see what the before was. So you can see what your adjustments are actually doing to your image. And then like I am doing right now, I can see the change happening in real time to the photo as I drag the slider. So like I said, contrast, basically it makes the values stand out from each other by making the shadows darker and your highlights brighter. Scrolling down, we have exactly what I just said, the highlights and then the shadows, so that would be your darker values. So if I pull the highlights up, it's going to make those whites pop a little bit more. But I want to be cautious to not blow out all of my highlights. I'm zooming in by pinching to zoom over here. Watch what happens if I pull the highlights, you know, a decent amount. It completely loses the detail in that white area. So I want to be very careful with highlights on any image, not just this one. Pretty much with all the sliders, I would not be going up to anywhere near 100 because you can see how much detail I just lost in those lightest lights. So I'm taking that back down, and notice how it brought back all that detail that I had previously lost. So I would just suggest like gentle touches on all of these sliders until you're sure what they do, and again, paying attention to your image the whole time. I'm talking through this edit, so this one's going to take a little bit longer, of course, than some of the other ones, because I want to see, or I want you to see what each of these adjustments are doing. And also, this process that I'm talking through with you out loud is exactly the conversation you should be having with yourself in your head as you edit your pictures. Next, shadows. So if I slide this slider to the right, you can see it's bringing up the shadows. That's how we would call it. Basically, it's lightening up those areas that are in shadow, like the darker values. If I bring it to the left, it's making the shadows stronger. So you can play with that as needed per image. Once again, we're looking for the lightest lights, the darkest darks, and everything in between in our edits. You've got a white and a black slider here that adjusts the whites. Once again, I'm paying attention to that white, it's like painted wood on the right side, and I'm paying attention to that as I'm adjusting the whites. And then I can see the black values here. That's left is making the black darker, and right is making it lighter. So there's, you know, kind of where I'm at. Another adjustment that you might want to adjust. If you go to effects, we've got a few more here. So clarity is the other one that I wanted to show you. This is a one that I use pretty regularly, but I only just use it a little bit. Other people like to really play with the clarity. So this pretty much increases your contrast in the midtones. So I told you about contrast before, where that is making your shadows darker and your highlights brighter. Now we have clarity, which is working with those midtones. So you can see if I drag it up, what it's doing to the image. This kind of gives you more of like a gritty look. Some people like to get really aggressive with clarity. I usually would stay in this region for a black and white picture, and this region for like my regular edits, especially in color. But that adds some more texture to that pipe where it says Smith, so I like that as well. Some of these other ones I'm not going to go through right now, but yeah, pretty much looking at my picture here, I'm feeling happy with this. I can see the lightest lights. I can see the darkest darks. It has a good range of value, and this honestly reminds me of a film image, which, as you guys remember, was the method of photography that Renger-Patzsch worked in. So I'm happy with this. This is my first out of 30 edits. At the top here, there's that square with the upward pointing arrow. I'm going to click on that and then just export to camera roll, and then the picture is saved. I would go jump over and just make sure it did save to your albums. But even if not, when I go back here, you can see now the edit is in my Lightroom album. Okay, so now that I've shown you my basic editing process, you guys can, and some of this was for photo 1's doing the elements of art. But now that I've shown you my basic editing process, I'm going to go through one way faster, and then I'll show you a few more specific edits that you guys might like to see based on things that you might be dealing with in your images. So you can see I'm doing this way faster. I'm paying attention to those same things that I just talked you guys through. For this picture specifically, I'm trying to draw out some more of those details on the leaf, bringing up the clarity a little bit more, and you can see the major change that that makes on the leaf. So I'm playing through a bit here. I thought of something else I was going to share, but I just forgot. Let me see if I can remember what it was. Oh yeah, I remember now. The tone curve. So in the light button at the bottom, you can see the curve in the top right corner. So if I click on that, you guys remember when we worked with levels and curves last year? So I want you to imagine the image histogram, which you see with levels. So remember, it's the darkest darks on the far left, the lightest lights on the far right, and everything in between is in the middle. This is the same slider that we would use in curves. So if you ever worked with a curves adjustment layer, this works the same way. What you can do is, if you want to mess with the lighter values, you can click in the top right corner. On this whole thing, if you drag up, whatever value you click on gets lighter. If you drag down, whatever value you click on gets darker. So for example, top right corner is once again the highlights. If I drag that up, my highlights are going up. If I drag the highlights down, my highlights are going down. The curves adjustment, if you guys remember from last year, this can get out of control very quickly. So you want to be very, very gentle with your adjustments as you're making them. I accidentally clicked right there. So I'm looking at my midtones. I'm really paying attention to my values. I can see the darkest darks in a few spots on the leaf, but especially on the left side of the image. And I'm trying to bring out some more texture on this photo. So you can see this is where I would end up. If I was to hit undo, you'll see, pay attention to the leaf, you'll see what it looked like before that curves adjustment. So do you see how those little changes really made, whoa, I was pressing and holding, showing them before, really made the textures on the leaf stand out. And I can go back and click on some of these previous curves, and yeah, so maybe I like that for my finished edit. Again, upward arrow, export to camera roll. There's, I believe, one last specific thing that I feel like you guys might like to know depending on your images. So far I've showed you how to remove color from your photo. I've showed you how to do muted color, which remember is when you click on color, bring the saturation slider just kind of low. You're probably not going to want this for every image. Again, remember Renger-Patzsch edited in black and white, or not edited, his photos were in film. His photos were taken in black and white, but I'm giving the option, if there's a picture that you feel like just has to have color, I'm giving you the option to do that muted color. So like I said, there's one more thing that I wanted to show you that I thought might, this is another picture I would use for this series. Good range of value. I like the texture on the leaves, etc. Another adjustment that I think might help you guys out, I did it on this picture right here. So under the little roof area, there might be an image that you want to edit just a specific area, like we did last year with masking, without adjusting the whole thing. For example, if I wanted to bring up the shadows under that roof, but I'm worried about the sky, pay attention to the sky. If I drag the exposure up, you can see I instantly lose that detail in those little minimal clouds. So what I would do here is use a selective adjustment. I'm going to show you on a different picture because that photo's already been edited Trying to see where the one I was using is. Okay, so this one, for this picture, I was thinking about Renger-Patzsch's industrial subject matter. So first, I'm going to go to the color and desaturate the image. Now, if for some reason this left side, I wanted to adjust that shadow area only, because again, maybe I'm trying to bring up the shadows like by doing exposure or shadows, but I don't like what it does to the rest of the picture, I could do a selective adjustment. So at the bottom of my screen, if I scroll over, and I would do my other adjustments first, but you know, contrast, clarity, highlights, shadows, but for sake of time, I'm just showing you selective edit. So very bottom, selective, and then at the top left corner is the plus sign. So you can do 3 types of selective edits in this app. The first one is a radial adjustment. So I clicked with my finger and I'm dragging to resize this circle, and I can then move it if I like did it in the wrong part. But basically wherever you place it, then wherever it is, my adjustment will only happen, I'm doing it dramatic so you can see, my adjustment will only happen in the space where that selective edit is. So I'm taking it off and showing you the one I would actually do here. I would either use I cannot think of the name right now, a graduated adjustment filter. So this one you can click and drag. Imagine like a sky that you want to specifically adjust, but not the whole image. And again, I can adjust just that side of the picture without the other areas that are not in the red being affected. So that could be helpful. This can be adjusted after the fact too, like if you need to move it. So that's very nice. But I could also use the last selective edit option, which is this little paintbrush. So basically wherever I paint with my finger, I can adjust just those areas. You want to kind of think about what you're doing with this. You want it to still look realistic, but just a minor adjustment, you can see, I'll go back, you can see the change that that's making. I wouldn't do anything like this, that looks weird, but just a little bit, if for some reason I wanted to see some of those details, that's how you would do a selective edit. Again, you might like to do that on something like a sky or whatever. There's lots of other things, something in shadow. I'm going to hit the check mark at the bottom right corner, which takes me out of the selective edit. And then, like I said, I still would do all of my other adjustments. I expect that you guys are doing more than just one adjustment on your pictures. You shouldn't just be putting it in black and white. You should be really taking your time with every single picture, with every single edit. I'm giving you plenty of time to edit this series. It should look like every single one of your pictures is that you thought through the time, that every picture is different, that you really worked with what you have so that you can produce your best photos. You're getting plenty of time to edit these pictures, so you should take the time appropriately. That's pretty much what I wanted to show you guys today. I showed you some of the subject matter we talked about. I showed you how to adjust the values of your images in quite a few different ways. We talked about first step, which is the undo button is helpful. The first step, which is desaturating your picture. And remember, we're not pressing the black and white button that you see right here. We're simply lowering the saturation. Or if you want to, like I said, you could do muted color. That's artist choice for this project. I showed you a few other things like clarity, how that can adjust. And there's lots more options here too. You can play around as you feel. But yeah, again, the main focus is lightest lights, darkest darks, and all the values in between, and editing in the style of Renger-Patzsch. Remember, you're editing all 30 pictures, and then we will talk together about how we will submit them. At this point, you're just editing and saving them. Thanks for watching.